We are back. Bully Ball, San Francisco 49ers podcast. It's been, what would you say, 6, 7 months since we've done one of these. But, we got busy. Life got busy. 49ers went on a insane run that we might talk about a little bit, but we're mostly here to talk about how the off season is gone and getting ready for the NFL draft. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good, doing good. Glad to be talking back about Niner football. Like we said, it's been a wild 9, 10 months probably. Because I don't even did we do any during the season?
I don't
Maybe like
know.
one or two at the
Yeah, I don't
beginning.
know.
Yeah, so we've had our hearts broken and everything, but we're back. Trying to run it back, get back there again. The ultimate goal. Dad, how you doing?
Doing good. It's been a while. Like you said, heart's been broken. We'll get past it. If you're a 49er fan, it seems like something we've been doing lately. But the moves that we made, the changes we've made so far, feeling pretty good. We'll get into that.
Yeah, and you two are both in the, California, close to the Bay Area. Are you considered in the Bay Area now or no? Still just close?
Yes, we are Bay Area now.
Yeah, so Alex back from being overseas, so now he won't be watching games at 2 a.m. in the morning like I have to for another year. So that'll be
Thank
nice. And you'll
God.
be able to go to games, which
Yeah,
that'll be nice. So
yeah.
lucky for you guys, that'll be good this year. All right, so let's dive into this off season. So before we pull up any names, people that have signed, people that have left, what do you think right now? Do you think the 49ers are better than they were in the Super Bowl roster wise, or do you think they are worse?
Right now, I would say marginally better, not significantly better though. I think, and there's an issue with that. I mean, we can talk about it later, but I would say right now we are marginally better, just a hair better than we were in the Super Bowl. What do you think, Dad?
I agree. With getting rid of Eric, I think the replacement for him is going to be a little better. Seems like he's a solid guy where Eric was out a lot. Armstead missed a lot of games, so that was always a little down. This dude seems pretty consistent, real consistent playing wise. I think we're a little better.
All right. And do you guys think so? This is something I've been hearing this off season a lot. Do you think the 49ers Super Bowl window is closing? Do you think this is possibly the last year before not necessarily a rebuild, but maybe a retooling has to happen as players get older, contracts more expensive, can't pay everybody? What do you think about that?
I mean, obviously, your Super Bowl window can't really stay open 10, 15 years, unless you have like that generational player like Brady or Peyton Manning or Mahomes. I think it's obviously closing, and this might be our last year for a while that we're really at the top of the NFC. Our saving grace is that Brock, can be that foundational player, that generational type player that you can build around. He doesn't need a bunch of great pieces. Pretty similar to like Mahomes. He has one or two guys. So I think that's our saving grace. But I definitely do think our window is closing just because of our players. Our top players right now are getting older, getting more money. I mean, look at the contract situation with Ayuk. That's coming up. So I definitely think it's getting smaller. It's minimizing for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. We're right there. The window's wide open, I believe. We did have a couple questions answered from last season because when we were talking about this the season before, we didn't know if Brock Purdy was a fluke. What was going on? Was he legit? Some people thought he was. Some people thought he wasn't. They said he didn't play enough. We had a great season with him. Couple bad games. Everybody has bad games or slow games. So I think that's a big part. We're really confident with them. So I believe the window is getting tighter. You know, once you got to start paying people, start losing guys. They're getting older. A lot of the key guys. That window is, I feel like it's closing.
Yeah, I could see that. I personally, I don't know if I would say it's closing because, something I was thinking about, and I was like, how does a team's window close? Obviously, it's when the contracts start getting too expensive, your star players start getting older. But then I was thinking, well, if Brock Purdy is who we say he is, your window should never close because you should always be competitive if you have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, right? So I wouldn't say necessarily it's closing, but I will say a lot of the 49er players, star players, haven't been performing up to what we think they should be. And it's been like that for a little while now, 49ers, it's a weird thing because we talk about this a lot, but 49ers are the best team in the NFC, the past 2 seasons. The year before, you could say maybe second, whatever. But the 49ers star players don't play like star players on other teams. It just, something doesn't feel right to me with these people. How do you guys feel about that? Like, is that coming across right, what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, Super Bowl, like we don't want to talk about it too much, but that's a perfect example. You get Kelsey the ball, and like he makes that big play on like third down and long. Rashee Rice, one of their better receivers, he makes those plays. Our guys kind of just, I almost think it's more of like a coaching thing that we don't make it an emphasis to get our best players the ball. You know what I mean? It's just like the scheme just doesn't allow for that for some reason. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey gets the ball a lot, but you also have George Kittle, who had one catch and 3 yards, I think, or something like that, right? Brandon Ayuk, you barely targeted him like 4 times in the Super Bowl. He's a 1,300-yard receiver this year, one of the top receivers in the game, and they're just not being given the opportunity for whatever reason. And I don't necessarily think it's on the players. Like I said, I think it's more coaching wise.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I agree with that. I think we've said this for a while now. Coach Shanahan gets in his head a little bit, and he kind of throws the game himself. He doesn't throw it on purpose, obviously, but he kind of gets in his own head, and it kind of ruins the game because he takes himself out of it. You know what I mean? Obviously, that game, you had the players making mistakes on the field, things like that as well. But that's a whole different topic. Go ahead, Dad.
Sometimes I believe there's that curse that you can have too many stars and you don't know how to use them all, or you get cold feet, and sometimes I think the names are bigger than the plays for us. We have the most Pro Bowlers. We had everything that it should have been a walk in the park, but that's not always how it goes, and I do put a lot of this on Shanahan. It was a couple of coaching calls, like taking the ball first in that overtime. I just think it was some mistakes, but you look back at Andy Reid's coaching, he was blowing games 15 years before where he's at now. And I almost feel like that's something that Shanahan's doing. He's got that monkey not just on his back, the freaking monkey's beating his head now. And then we got to get that monkey off before it's too late. And then 15 years later, he's coaching another team, dominating Super Bowls like Andy Reid. I think that's more of our problem than the players. Because like Alex said, you got Ayuk. Let's live and die by him in that game. You got Kittle. Like, come on. There's no reason to have that flat third quarter where we just lay down. And I think it goes to coaching, calling the plays. And it's not that they're just not getting open, because we have a lot of little dump off plays where get the ball in their hands and let's try to see what happens. Make it happen. And if we die like that, hey, we die like that.
Yeah, and I mean, perfect example is, Chiefs win the game, who's winning MVP. And if it's not Mahomes, who is it? It's probably Travis Kelce. 49ers end up winning that game. Who won MVP? Jawan Jennings. And I love Jawan Jennings. Great player, made great plays. Should not win MVP. It should be one of your star players. And I think that just goes to show the game plan. You know what I mean? You were not, I don't know, maybe he was in his head like, hey, they're going to lock these dudes down. Let's go to somebody else. But you got to force feed these dudes. And moving on from that, onto this offseason, let's talk about some of the positions of 49ers filled and what the needs they still have are. So I have this sheet that I'm going to pull up. But you guys could go ahead and start saying what you feel the needs we still have are heading into the draft.
Yeah. So obviously, I think one of the biggest needs, 49er fans have been beating this thing like a dead horse, is obviously O-line. We need more O-line depth. We need, Colton McKivitz did good at right tackle. So you don't have to force feed that right there. You know what I mean? You don't have to force a pick right there if the player's not meeting that value at 31. You're going to need a right guard because Spencer Burford is what lost us one play doesn't lose the Super Bowl, but it was a significant factor into it. So Spencer Burford is an issue. You obviously bring back John Feliciano, who was great. He filled in great, but that's not a long-term option. We signed him to a 1-year deal. So you need to get interior linemen because you're going to need a center too. Jake Brendel, he's getting older. Banks on the other side is pretty good. Could be improved if you found somebody somehow, but ultimately, I think the biggest need right now is going to be that interior O-line, which is great for the 49ers because this draft is plentiful of athletic, big offensive linemen that can fill in those positions for us.
Yeah, 100% agree. And like you said, the interior O-line is what ended up losing that game at the end. And, I think one thing that might not be talked about enough is the 49ers center is supposed to be the one that pretty much tells the O-line who to block in Kyle Shanahan's scheme. So possibly Brendel, I don't know who, it might have just been a bust by Burford, but maybe Brendel gave him the wrong read as well. I don't know. So something to think about as well.
I think I saw something that Burford posted, and he was like, I went off my instinct instead of trusting the play call. So I think it was pretty solely on Burford on that one. But yeah,
well,
obviously glaring need.
Enough. Yeah, so interior O-line, obviously I would say the tackle position as a whole, because you would love to get your right tackle better. And Trent Williams is done one of these years, man. Well, I thought he was going to be done if we won the Super Bowl. So possibly next year, who knows? But you're going to need to address tackle at some point. And then the 49ers have kind of told us what they need still by who they try to bring in. They sign Brock Wright to that restricted free agent offer sheet. They're telling you they want to upgrade it tight end. And then also they bring in the safety. Who was it a week ago or two?
Blackman from the Colts.
Yeah, Justin Blackman. And then they brought in, I believe it was Rayshon Jenkins a couple weeks before that. So they're telling you they need a safety as well. And I did see something on Twitter today saying, the longer Justin Simmons is out there, the better chance they have at signing him because the price tag keeps dropping. But I think those are two positions of need that they're telling you they need. And I would also probably say a corner, maybe a corner. They did sign a guy, but I think you might need one more corner to compete outside. So what about you, Dad? Any positions of need you think the 49ers have?
I think both you guys nailed it. But I really think we do need the O-line. That's something that we haven't really addressed for multiple years now. It's about that time that we build that, because if we could build that, we're going to give Purdy more time, to let plays develop, and then he could really start killing teams. Open up big holes for Christian. He's already killing it. Like, I think that could just be the world of difference if we could come out with a solid line. I think that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah, and I mean the last high pick the 49ers had on the O-line was Aaron Banks, and that was 3-4 years ago now.
Yeah.
So they really have not addressed it with the high. I mean, obviously they didn't have a first round pick for years, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, and like kind of piggybacking off of what you said about the safety position. Obviously, you have Talanoa Hufanga, and I think that's what they're kind of concerned about, because if we remember, Hufanga wasn't playing as good as he was the year prior for that first little 5 or 6 game stretch that he did play. He did not look like that all pro that he looked like his sophomore year. So I think they're kind of concerned about that. His speed was an issue kind of already, and then now you're coming off a torn ACL. So I think I think they're really concerned about that whole time frame. Going through this list, kind of just doing plus and minuses, the 49ers completely revamped their whole D-line. You see Eric Armstead gone, Chase Young gone, Javon Kinlaw gone, Sebastian Joseph Day gone, Cleveland Farrell gone, Randy Gregory gone. That's all of your D-line depth gone. And you bring in Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd, Yator Gross-Matos, Jordan Elliott. And a big thing I think that we see there is obviously the names aren't as good as what left the team, but it's the consistency of staying on the field. You're not going to have Eric Armstead only playing 6 games a year, then his foot turning into some fucking baby back smoked ribs falling off the bone and shit. Same with Chase Young, great name value, but then he didn't perform on the field at all. So I think these guys, little under the radar, little less known, but it's going to be great to have that consistency of actually having players out there on the field able to contribute something. You know what I mean? So,
and wanting to make a name for themselves.
Yeah.
You're on a team now that is a contender. This is a perfect opportunity for you in your career.
Yep.
Yeah, and as we've seen, you come to the 49ers on the D-line, you usually end up getting paid by the next team. And like we said, the name value, it don't really do anything for us anymore. I understand the 49ers still one of the best teams in the league every year, but look at the teams the 49ers played in the playoffs. The Packers were on our ass. They should have beat us with tons of rookies, youngest team in the NFL, no names. And then look at the Lions. They really should have beat our ass. And they have some name value now, but they were all young dudes, not the huge names. So it's nice and refreshing to kind of see the churn, it's kind of like what the Rams did, they retooled the whole team, didn't think they were going to be competitive for years. And look, last year they had a ton of no names and they were balling towards the end of the year. So I love to see the churning of the roster. I've been one of the biggest complainers about Eric Armstead for years now. I think he gets paid a lot and I don't really see the value as much as other people. But same like you said with Chase Young, that's a huge name. But Leonard Floyd is twice the value on the field as him. So, I like the signings. Any of those ones on the D line that you guys like the most or ones you like the least?
Oh, obviously, like you said, Leonard Floyd, that was a big one. Because actually having somebody that can because I think I saw something on Twitter that said, we haven't had the person opposite of Nick Bosa have more than 6.5 or 8 sacks since I think Eric Armstead had 10 or whatever that year before he got paid. So if Leonard Floyd can come in and get 10 sacks, that'd be huge to actually have a true threat opposite of Nick Bosa. So that's a big one. The one that kind of confuses me is Jordan Elliott, because I've seen a lot of things say like he was terrible with the Browns, like one of the worst players on the team. But then I've seen some that say like he's good in a run block defense. So that one's just confusing. I guess we'll have to see how it plays out throughout training camp and the course of the season.
Yeah, I agree with that one. For me, I would say my favorite probably Malik Collins. You know, I had no clue who he was literally until the trade happened. And then I saw the cut-ups of him, and that dude is like one of the purest interior pass rushers I've seen. You know, he just has a variety of tricks in his bag. He could beat interior linemen often and with ease. He kind of looked like what I thought, just the cut-ups, right? I didn't watch no full games, but that's what I thought more we were going to get from Hargrave last year, is like the type of moves I was seeing from him. So I really like that one. The one that confused me was the Yetur Gross Matos. Not necessarily the fit, because he kind of does that like Arden Key type thing, Omenihu that could play outside, inside, but they paid him a lot of money for a guy that doesn't have much production. So that one was kind of confusing to me. How about you, Dad?
You know, I'm with you guys on that. I liked Floyd. I liked his consistency on the field. He didn't miss a lot. And I think that's important for us. We need the guys on the field. Like I said, we don't need the big names. We need the big plays. And if you're being consistent on the field, you're going to have more opportunities to make things happen. So that was the one that I really liked.
Yeah, and looking at this list, you know, who's one player each of you would pick from the rest of the guys that kind of intrigues you that we brought in?
I mean, obviously, for me, I would say one guy that's pretty intriguing would have to be Isaac Yiadom, you know, the corner from the Saints. You know, he had some great stats last year. I think he had 13 PBUs, so that's great stats from him. And like we said, corner is a position of need. So he's going to have that opportunity to go out there and possibly be the corner opposite of Mooney Ward. You know, if you want to kick Demo Lenore inside, he might be able to give you that versatility that you can do that. He's a younger guy. Obviously, he was a free agent for a reason. The Saints didn't re-sign him for a reason, whatever that was. So I'm curious to see how he's going to play out. But if he can step up and actually be that solid corner opposite of Mooney Ward, I think that opens up our defense surmountably, you know what I mean, to allow Demo to play inside, because I think that's where he plays best.
Yeah, I agree, because, you know, obviously you had Mooney All-Pro last year, great season. Yadam, you know, he wasn't the starter to start the year. I believe it was when Marshawn Lattimore got hurt, he came in and was playing great. If he could play at that level on the outside for us, we saw what Demo did last year in the playoffs. That dude was playing at a Pro Bowl, All-Pro level as well, like insane. So if you could have 3 Pro Bowl, All-Pro like talent levels playing at that high level, man, that's pretty game changing. That would be amazing. What about you, Dad? Any name on that list that we haven't spoke about yet intrigues you?
Shoot, my glasses are a little blurry today.
Well, I know you said you were intrigued by Josh Dobbs, so if you wanted to speak on
Oh
him.
yeah. I really like that. You know, I think I don't know. I like that one. I think with Shanahan coaching him, you know, because sometimes we bag on Shanny, you know, we think he blows games and stuff, but he is a great coach, and he does know how to pull the best out of players. I think he's going to be pretty legit with under Shanahan. I think if something happened, he'd be able to win us some games. I'd feel pretty confident with him. But I really like that. I hope that we could get him and keep him for a couple of years under him. Because he was balling out, I believe, with Arizona for a minute. He had some good highlights with Minnesota. I like him. I think that was a good one.
Yeah, I agree because he's shown before with these other teams that he's been able to come in because the starter got injured and win you a game or two. And the Niners don't have the best luck, obviously, with quarterback health. Knock on wood. But if worse comes to worse, I feel like he could come in and win us a game or two or three if needed. Obviously, we hope that doesn't happen. I'm not saying that Sam Darnold couldn't do that, but obviously Sam Darnold gets signed away for $10 million. You bring Josh Dobbs in for what I think like $3 million or something, 2.5 I think or something like that. So yeah, that's a really good signing too.
Well, and I think it'll help us in the practice too, because he's mobile. He's got a good arm. So when we're practicing against ourselves, he's going to be putting you to the test. So I like that one all the way around.
Yeah, I think that was a really good underrated signing. And he was winning games with bad teams. The Vikings, they were without Justin Jefferson most of the time that he was playing with them. And the Cardinals, we saw they were trash last year. So he was winning games with terrible teams and making big plays. So good signing. I personally think he's better than Sam Darnold. That might just be me, but I do think that was a great underrated signing. And I'll go with Devondre Campbell. Obviously Dre Greenlaw gets hurt, and that's devastating. So you bring in a guy that was an all-pro a couple years back, and he has said that he thinks he was being used wrong with the Packers. So, we don't need him to be great. We need him to fill in until Dre is good to go. And, if he's even half of what he was in his all-pro year, that's money in the bank. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was a signing I really liked. He was great in pass coverage with the Packers a couple years ago. Good run defender. And like you said, he just needs to fill in until Dre Greenlaw gets back, whenever that is, probably towards the end of the season. But I still think that is another position of need as well, obviously, because Ezekiel Turner, I saw he was a special teams player. So obviously, I think that is a position of need still going into the draft with the linebacker too.
Yeah, and I have a thing I want to mention about these needs that we're mentioning. But before we do that, are there any of these going aways that you guys think is, that one's going to hurt the most? Obviously, we know Eric Armstead is a big name, big loss. But besides him, any of these that you feel is like a big hit to the team losing that player?
Yeah, I would say Isaiah Oliver. No, just kidding. Hell no, dude. Good riddance. I would say I think the biggest impact that will be missed would probably be Clelin Ferrell. Just because of his run defense that he brought. He wasn't the best pass rusher, but his ability to play against the run was pretty significant. And that, obviously, you don't get all the time. Obviously, some people are going to say Chase Young, but like we said, that's more of a name value. So I think the biggest impact that's going to be missed is Clelin Ferrell for his run defense and just his effort and tenacity that he played with. So I think that's the biggest one for me.
What about you, Dad?
I'd say McLeod. Because we go back a couple years back to when the Giants got us. Remember, that's one thing I still have nightmares on that shit. And even when he was out, when he was injured this year, I forgot who it was.
Ronnie Bell.
Yeah, came in and man, that's the one for me. I liked him. I was comfortable with them back there.
Yeah, that's who I was going to say too. That's a huge loss. Just the stability. And not even the fact that he also was a great punt returner. Like, but just the stability, you knew he was going to secure the ball. Big loss. But since you took him, I'll say Kinlaw, because that dude stepped up and finally played. I wouldn't say like a top 12, 15 pick, but you finally saw the talent that the dude had this year. And I thought we might be able to get him back cheap for one more year, but the Jets signed him to a big deal. Obviously, we weren't going to match that, but it was good to see him finally step up and play well for once.
Yeah, and it's good to see him get paid. You know what I mean? He had a rough start. You know what I mean? So when those players go and they finally do good, you know, it's good for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And then here you could see we have the re-signings and extensions. Um, you know, how do you guys feel about Tashawn Gibson? Would you want him back?
I mean, I would bring him back for cheap just because, like we said, we need that depth. You're going to bring Jair Brown, a second-year guy, and then Talanoa Hufanga's coming off injury. Tashawn Gibson has been playing great, or at least good, for the past few years. He is older, but I would bring him back on like a cheap one-year deal.
You did?
Yeah, I agree. Same thing. I think even just because he is older, you know, the experience and everything with the young guys that come in under him, you know, I think it's always good to have a vet like that around. I would say him.
Yeah, that one's tough for me because I saw a drastic drop off from him this year finally, especially in the playoffs. That dude was missing hella tackles. I would bring him back for depth, not to start. If he had a start, you got a problem this year. I think the age finally got to him. Ross Dwelly, I mean, if you're bringing him back for the bare minimum, like vet minimum, whatever, but you really need to upgrade that backup tight end position, and they tried. Juwan Jennings, love that they put the tender on him. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, obviously that's big. Just even if he's not getting targeted all the time, just the effort, tenacity that he plays with, that's what we look for out of our receivers. His blocking ability, he brings that energy, that juice every time he gets the ball. So obviously, great signing. Balled out in the Super Bowl, so obviously you had to bring him back.
You know, he was I was at both those playoff games. So I got to see it live. And he was one of the ones that kept that, like you said, we should have lost those games. He had a big part in us winning those games. So that was huge. I really liked him. I was real happy the year before last when we brought him back because he's a baller. He's underrated. You know, when you have the big names we have, you kind of overlook him. Like he could be somebody big.
Yeah, he's a really good player, and he reunites with his college quarterback, Josh Dobbs,
So they say they're
who,
working already.
yeah, who both have thrown each other touchdowns, believe it or not. So you love to see that. And we talked about the needs the 49ers still have. And, it's interesting because I've mentioned it multiple times that I felt like the 49ers have not been drafting good in recent years. But we mentioned tight end. The 49ers drafted 2 tight ends last year. Tight end should not be a need this year. You mentioned linebacker. Obviously, we had an injury, but we still need the depth. And they signed 2 guys. We drafted 2 linebackers last year. So, how do you guys feel? And then also think about the Super Bowl. That punt return, the ball bounced off of a rookie's leg. So, how do you guys feel about going into this draft? We do finally have a first round pick. We have 10 picks total. We need to draft good, but how confident are you in us doing that?
Yeah, we'll see because another thing that's going under the radar right now is Adam Peters is gone too. So who knows how big of an impact he had on the draft as well. Maybe he was the one finding all the diamonds in the rough, and Lynch and Shannon were the ones picking the Joe Williams, the Cam Latu, Moody, you know what I mean? So I think that's ultimately too what is catching up to us and why our Super Bowl window is closing, because we haven't been drafting those players that can actually perform and have an impact. You know what I mean? Last year's rookie class, who actually had an impact? You have Jair Brown and Jake Moody, and that's really it out of
And
how many picks?
yeah, and Jake Moody missed the extra point in the Super Bowl. I forgot to mention that one as well.
Yeah. And then all the third round picks that we've wasted on running backs or tight ends, kicker, you know what I mean? Like, this is the year, especially with our star players getting older, that you need to start nailing these early and mid round picks. You can't just rely on 5th round picks, 6th round, 7th round picks to outperform their draft position. You know what I mean? You got to nail these early to mid round picks. And based off the past, it doesn't look very evident that we can do that.
Yeah. And I mean, the 49ers obviously have been great at finding the diamonds, people that become superstars. Brock Purdy, George Kittle, whatever, all these names, right? The depth pieces, the glue pieces that win you Super Bowls, terrible. They do not find depth pieces that can give you, solid play on the O-line, for example. Not a star player, a solid player, or a solid backup to fill in when someone goes down. Things like that. Terrible at finding those players, and I don't know why. So yeah, I agree. That's one of the reasons you got to nail it this year, because look at the teams that are on our ass. Green Bay drafted great the past couple years. That's why they're competitive. The Lions, look at how many rookies the Lions had last year that were starting and playing amazing. And then the Rams are the most evident one. They traded all their picks. They were the F them picks team. But then they're nailing all these later picks. So you look at them last year when you're playing them and you're like, I don't know 14 to 17 of these starters on this team, but they're competing with us because they're drafting great in those late rounds. We need to get back to that level.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have to. Like you said, all these teams are young and they're performing, and we're probably looking like one of the oldest teams in the league now, I would imagine. So you got to start replacing these guys, and you can't just go out and sign everybody to huge dollars, obviously. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. So on our next pod, we'll be jumping into some prospects. My brother and my dad have the scouting guide from Emory Hunt that we look at every year. So hopefully they dive into that a little bit, and we'll be able to look and talk about some draft prospects next time, because we got 3 weeks until the NFL draft.
Yeah.
Yep, it's coming.
Yep. So it should be a good one. Last thoughts: trade or keep Brandon Ayuk?
Obviously, keep. I think the connection and chemistry that him and Purdy have can be something special. I think he's going to be huge for Purdy's growth and development as a quarterback. I would much rather trade Debo. I mean, just, that can be a different podcast on its own, but I think you have to keep Ayuk, and you have to find how to do that one way or another.
I agree. Ayuk's one of those players that, when we're talking about this, when he retires, that he should be having that gold jacket on. He has the potential. He's a baller, not just with his hands, catching, but he blocks downfield 100%. I think when we were looking, he only missed a couple games here and there out of the last couple of years. All that stuff adds up, and he's one of those players you got to find a way to pay him.
Yeah,
And just his constant growth from his rookie to, what is this, his 3rd year now? Was this his third year or fourth year?
Fourth. He'll be on his 5th-year option this next season.
Yeah, I mean, he's gone up in yards every single year. You know what I mean? Like receiving yards. So yeah, you got to pay him.
Yeah, and I mean, the dude has the talent that Debo has, but he plays with the effort that Jawan Jennings does. And when you do both of those things, he does everything. All well-rounded player, does all the dirty work, but also could be a 1,700-yard receiver if he actually was featured. Love the dude. Pay him. Pay it. He should be making the money that Debo does or more. And it's hard to pay him because you paid Debo that much. But
Yep.
that's all we got for this podcast. We hope you guys enjoy us being back. We're going to try to get back into it for you guys. So we'll see you in the next pod.
Peace.
Peace.